Hello guys and welcome back to the F1 Tube YouTube channel. Now, one of F1's main talking points since the summer break has been the possible introduction to qualifying races. Yep, the possibility that on Saturdays in 2020 at the Belgium, French and Russian Grand Prix, instead of the 3 qualifying session format we know and very much love in the F1 community, there would be an effective sprint race in reverse championship order so that the lower teams can finish and compete at a reasonable level, and to ultimately spice up the action across the span of the F1 field. In this video I will evaluate my verdict on this possible format. Now here's the thing with qualifying. At certain Grand Prix and at a collection of Grand Prix really, qualifying is arguably the most exciting part of the Formula 1 weekend. Not just because it's the part of the weekend where we see the cars and the drivers on the edge the most, but it's arguably the most dramatic part of the weekend, full stop. And as much as I love qualifying, you know, the end of Q1, Q2 and the whole of Q3, there is so much intrigue within the sessions. You know, factor in track evolution, crashes that can halter some drivers. And when you translate the cars being on the track on race day, use the French Grand Prix as an example, we had no real drama. Well, at the front at least. So as much as we want the race to be the most exciting part of the weekend, I don't think we need to take away qualifying. It's not something that we need to change. And as much as I like the conscience of F1 trying to explore different formats to improve the F1 spectacle, like I said, I don't think qualifying is the area we need to improve upon. Personally, I feel that Liberty and the F1 hierarchies need to look elsewhere in order to improve the race weekend format. Now, granted, not every race in Formula 1 is going to be exciting, adequate or satisfactory. That's just a part of the sport. But as long as F1 can sort out these issues, if you like, that are depriving us F1 fans from what could be an even more scintillating sport, then I will be happy. For me, I don't think F1 is in a major or cataclysmic decline. There are just some evident, clear examples that F1 needs to sort out, or at least, you know, draw the line on. Firstly, we have the spreads between the top 3 teams and the midfield. Quite frankly, if the midfield battle would be translated at the front in terms of F1's pecking order, we would be craving Formula 1 to still be such a ridiculously unpredictable sport. Now, I'm not saying F1 is not unpredictable, but there are too many races in my mind that are predictable, or not unpredictable enough. When you take races in like Singapore, for example, the race at the front, the top 6 drivers in the top 3 teams, there wasn't much action going on amongst them, but the midfield was so crazy that you couldn't really keep up. And it's not just the Singapore Grand Prix that has proven to be like that. There has been many races. The French Grand Prix, although it wasn't fascinating to an extent in the midfield, there was still a bit of drama that we can take from. Quite frankly, all I would like to see is the gap between the top 3 teams and the midfield to be majorly closed. And I think this is the real issue, because how do you go about it? Even if F1 presses on with reverse grid races, 9 times out of 10, the top 6 drivers who will start from the back at the end of the weekend will still end up, you know, in the top 6. The only way this issue can be rectified in my mind is if we get some rather highly regarded technical directors to come into these midfield teams and attempt to close the gap. Or apply more restrictions to these cars so there's not such a major difference in aerodynamic performance. However, the problem with that in my mind is that it makes F1 more of a spec series, and F1 is not like that at all in my mind. Formula E they don't regard as a spec series, but there are some really strict regulations they have applied onto the teams, and to me that's a almost sub-spec series because the teams are so constrained to what they can do with the actual car and chassis. My next point is the cars themselves. Now, on a Saturday, these current Formula 1 cars are almighty. They can carry some serious speed through some high-speed corners. Use Silverstone as an example, use Japan as an example, use Spa as an example. The speed, the inhumane essence of Formula 1 is illustrated in these qualifying laps. However, come race day, these cars still carry that aerodynamic performance, and it makes following cars from behind very difficult and limiting overtaking possibilities and opportunities, not making the racing as exciting, and that is what's putting the fans off, as well as obviously other elements. Now, the 2019 cars, when it comes to following one car after another, it's not impossible as people are perceiving it to be. It's just very difficult. We still get, a collection of overtakes, but if we can reduce the amount of aerodynamic effect on these cars, not majorly, because I still want to see Formula 1 cars being relatively quick. In fact, just as quick as maybe 2016, where we still got plenty of overtakes. But as long as we can cut the performance in terms of aerodynamics enough to improve the racing to a satisfactory level consistently, then I will be happy. Speed is important in F1 cars, but racing, that is what F1 should be about. So if we were to apply strong enough restrictions onto these cars, we would not only improve the racing spectacle, but we would also cut the gap between the midfield and the top three teams, and that is sorting out two issues in one movement. Finally, we have the amount of data F1 teams can claim through practice and testing. Thankfully, F1 is making slight improvement in reducing the amount of testing in terms of pre-season testing next year, but the 2020 cars are going to be an evolution of the 2019 cars, so they are still going to have reasonable amount of data, if not an extortionate amount. In my mind, practice, there should be only one practice session, this being on the Friday, either 1.5 hours or 2 hours, enough time for the teams to get some data in, but only enough time to do a qualifying simulation and maybe one, stint of race simulation. Not only does this mean that the teams have to prioritise different things that factor into a race weekend, qualifying simulations, what tyres they believe will run better in the race. That makes racing more unpredictable, and also come Saturday the conditions could be totally different, and that will further spice up the action. Now, in terms of F1 reverse grid races, it needed to have a unanimous agreement between the 10 F1 teams. That agreement was not met, so for the moment there will be no reverse grid races instead of qualifying at 3 races next year. But there is still plenty of time for that to change. But guys, that is it for my 9-minute rabble. Please like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and tell me, what are your ideas for how F1 can improve the racing spectacle going forwards? Or even tell me, do you think F1 even needs to change certain elements? And please subscribe, guys, to the F1 Tube YouTube channel for more content like this, and especially this upcoming Mexican Grand Prix weekend. There will be some content coming out about, qualifying, race, all that jazz, so stay tuned for that. But until next time, guys, see you later.